It's 1992. You're just a kid, maybe 12 or 13 years old, or maybe an adult, 18, 19, or maybe you're a grown man, pushing the door open to your local arcade. The moment you step inside, the sounds hit you like a wave, the average button clicking. You've got a pocket full of tokens, enough for a good time. You probably got that $5 special out the machine. And as you walk in, you pass through rows of familiar games, old school Pac-Man, Chompin' Dots, Street Fighter 2, players shouting Hadouken. But today, something's a little different. You notice a crowd gathered in the back corner. Kids are pushing in close trying to see, so you're curious and you squeeze through the crowd. And there it is, a brand new arcade cabinet, black with a red dragon logo. And then you look at the screen as it flickers with two ninjas locked in a deadly fight. This isn't like other games, it's darker, grittier, and at the end of the round, you hear the word finish him. And all of a sudden the screen goes dark and the blue ninja rips out the yellow ninja's spine. In that moment, the kids watch and scream and cheer like they've just seen the coolest thing ever. But not everyone is happy. Over by the change machine, a couple of parents are watching with their mouths hanging wide open. One of them covers their younger kid's eyes, another shakes their head in disgust, because this isn't just another game, it's something new, something dangerous, and something that feels forbidden. And it was actually designed that way. And this was a moment in time that changed everything. Today we're diving deep into the complete history of Mortal Kombat, the original 1992 arcade game that shocked the world, thrilled gamers, and left a permanent mark on video game history. We'll talk about its creation, some of the controversy it stirred up, and at the end we'll take a look at the ports that came from this magnificent game. So sit tight, grab a snack, because this is the story of Mortal Kombat, the arcade from 1992. Now before Mortal Kombat existed, Midway Games wasn't really famous for fighting games. They were better known for making fun but simple arcade titles like Rampage, where you smash buildings as giant monsters, and exciting side-scrolling games like Narc, which was about crime fighting and over-the-top action. But everything changed in 1991. That year, Street Fighter 2 exploded onto the scene. It was a huge hit in arcades all around the world. Players lined up to battle their friends, throwing fireballs, doing crazy uppercuts called dragon punches or shoryukens, and learning complicated combo moves. Suddenly, fighting games were the coolest thing in the arcades. Kids and teens couldn't get enough. Other companies noticed and wanted a piece of that action. And Midway, of course, was no different. But they needed their own fighting game to keep up. So at first, Midway had a really wild idea. What if they made a game starring an actual martial arts movie star, Jean-Claude Van Damme? He was super popular at the time because of movies like Bloodsport and Kickboxer. It was Van Damme mania. They even wanted to name the game Van Damme the Arcade Game. Just imagine it. Players would get to control Van Damme himself performing movie-like martial arts moves in an arcade. And please, for the love of God, if they were thinking about that, just then put a part in where he did that bad dance like he did in Kickboxer. The one when he got drunk? Oh, that was total cringe. But anyway, it seemed like the perfect plan to stand out. But then everything fell apart. The deal just didn't work out. Jean-Claude Van Damme said no. He didn't want to sign on. The whole project seemed like it was going to be canceled before it even started. But the team at Midway wasn't ready to give up, especially lead programmer Ed Boon and lead artist John Tobias. Instead of scrapping all their work, they asked themselves, well, what if we made our own martial arts story? What if it was darker, grittier, and way more realistic than other fighting games? And lastly, what if it had a violent edge that no one had ever seen before? They wanted their game to be shocking. They also wanted people to see it in arcades and stop in their tracks. Players should gather around the machine with their friends, their jaws dropping at what they saw on screen. So Ed Boon and John Tobias decided to use digitized actors, real people filmed and turned into game sprites. Now this made characters look much more realistic than traditional hand-drawn ones. And they didn't hold back on the violence. They added gruesome finishing moves called Fatalities, where you could rip out spines or burn your opponents to ashes. And at the time, it was unlike anything else. They also created a whole new fantasy world inspired by martial arts movies, mythology, and dark fantasy. And they filled it with colorful characters. So what began as a canceled Van Damme project turned into something completely new. It was raw, it was violent, and it definitely was unforgettable. So when it finally released in arcades in 1992, it wasn't just another fighting game. It was a phenomenon. Now let's talk about the small but mighty team. Imagine trying to make one of the most famous fighting games ever with just 4 people. No giant company behind you, no big budget, no fancy Hollywood studio, just 4 determined guys in Chicago working day and night in a small office. First up, we'll talk about Ed Boon. Now Ed Boon was the lead programmer and co-creator. He was in charge of making sure the game actually worked. He designed the fighting system, the punches, the kicks, and special moves. He also created the Fatalities, you know, those over-the-top finishing moves that shocked everyone and made Mortal Kombat famous. Ed loved to push limits as well. He wanted the game to feel dangerous and exciting. Also, there was John Tobias. Now, John was the lead artist and co-creator. He brought the world of Mortal Kombat to life. He wrote the story, designed the characters, and gave them their unique looks and personalities. Scorpion with his deadly spear, SubZero with his freezing powers, those were his ideas. He wanted the game to feel like a gritty martial arts movie. Next up was John Vogel, and Vogel was the background artist. He made all the places you fight in, like the dark, creepy dungeons and the spooky temples. He painted them to look realistic but still haunting. He set the mood and made every battle feel intense and mysterious. And lastly, but not least, you have Dan Fortin, Mr. Toasty himself. Now, Dan was a sound designer and composer. He created the music and sound effects that made Mortal Kombat so memorable. Think about the scream when a fatality hits or the ominous music before the fight starts. That was all Dan's work. And that was it. 4 people, no giant team, no $1 million budget, just talent and grit. And they only had 8 months to finish the game. Now, that's not a lot of time, especially back in the day. They didn't work in a fancy office building. They had a small studio that felt more like a workshop. Some days they stayed up all night, fueled by coffee and determination. And they had to be creative to make it work. Instead of using expensive motion capture technology, they actually had to film real actors in a tiny back room with a blue screen. They also used the old VHS camera, you know, the kind your parents might have for home movies back in the day. I mean, at the time, it was cutting edge. Now, there were other games like Pit Fighter at the time. It was a big risk, but it brought big reward. So one thing Mortal Kombat was known for its characters and their stories. So let's jump into that real quick. First up, we'll start with Liu Kang, the noble Shaolin monk. Now, Liu Kang is the classic hero of Mortal Kombat. Inspired by Bruce Lee, of course, he has fast punches, powerful kicks, and can shoot fire. He's a Shaolin monk who trains hard to defend the Earth realm. And why did he enter the tournament? To stop the evil sorcerer Shang Tsung from conquering Earth. He's calm, disciplined, and always does the right thing, even when it's hard. So players picked Liu Kang because he felt like the good guy and the face of the game. Now, as far as Liu Kang in the game, in my opinion, first of all the characters in this game are cheap, and this Mortal Kombat 1 is a broken game. There's really not a whole lot of balance in Mortal Kombat 2, and that's kind of broken as well, but there is a little bit more balance. So Mortal Kombat 1, anything goes. So they did have 5 reversions in this game, and I feel like Liu Kang is okay. I mean, pretty much every character has, the key strategy here with Mortal Kombat is basically getting 2-hit combos. For Liu Kang, for the most part, his moveset was okay. You had the flying kick across the screen, which at low levels, I feel like Liu Kang can be good, but the higher up you go, when you start playing against people who know how to play, they can kind of shut him down because his moves are kind of predictable, and initially they seem fast, but you can actually shut him down. So he's okay. Next up, we got Johnny Cage, the comic Hollywood star, and this guy's over the top. He's a kind of a flashy movie star who thinks he's tougher than anyone, and he's based on real-life action hero Jean-Claude Van Damme. Now, he's famous in Hollywood, but everyone just calls him fake. You know, this fake actor, fake karate man. So he joins the tournament to prove he's not just a stuntman, but actually a real fighter. He wears sunglasses, cracks bad jokes, and even does the splits before punching his opponents below the belt. Now, obviously, they got this move from, I have to say, some inspiration from Bloodsport when Frank Dukes goes down and hits that guy in the crotch. I mean, yeah, that looked pretty painful. But I have to think that's some of the inspiration where they got this from. And this character all together, because it's supposed to be Van Damme, but they had Cena come in and take over the character, and he would play a lot of the characters on the roster. He was the ninjas. He had Johnny Cage, of course, and Reptile, because Reptile being another one of the ninjas. So he had quite a bit of playthrough with the cast and will become a very integral part. Now, I don't want to go too far into his story, but basically he was promised a lot of money by Midway. The story's been told over and over, and Midway kind of chanced him and a lot of the crew. So that's why a lot don't return for Mortal Kombat 3, but that's a different story. But just know that he was a big part of Mortal Kombat's 1 and 2 and did a lot of acting and would go on to star in other games, but that's a different story for another time. Just know, we're talking about Johnny Cage, the character though, they would retcon the Mortal Kombat story. So they would change some things moving forward, just with like most things do. They start off at the beginning a certain way and then they retcon it to make it into a sequel or whatever. But originally here, we didn't know a whole lot about Johnny Cage. We just knew he was a Hollywood actor and he liked making movies. And his moveset, in my opinion, was pretty good. He had that slide kick, you can combo off that pretty easy, and those projectiles came out pretty fast. He had decent recovery on that. So overall, Johnny Cage was probably one of the better characters, and his fatality, he did have the glitch with the 3 heads that come off, and that will be later revised in Mortal Kombat 2, they'd make that an input you could do to get the 3 heads to roll off. But in the original Mortal Kombat, you know, it was 3 times you can get knocked 3 heads off. So how you did it was you just did the fatality, kept pushing forward, and 4 high punch, and you kept doing it, and then you keep knocking the heads off. So that's Johnny Cage, pretty good character. Next up, we got Sonya Blade, and she's a tough special forces agent. Now, Sonya's a soldier with a mission. She's chasing the criminal Kano across the realms, and he's a member of the Black Dragons. She's smart, determined, and doesn't take any nonsense from anyone. In the game, Sonya represents justice. She's the first woman fighter in Mortal Kombat, and players admired her toughness. Her main moves are her ring shot and her deadly leg grab, and her rivalry with Kano made every fight personal. Now, Sonya Blade in this game, this is probably her weakest incarnation of all the characters, all the versions of her, I should say. And she could be cheap. She was pretty cheap at like a low level because people at the time didn't know how to block that leg grab she had, and she was kind of cheap. Overall, though, her priority wasn't the best. That's one thing I should talk about, priorities. Liu Kang had decent priority. Johnny Cage had a really good priority with his uppercut, anti-airing. Sonya, hers was okay at times, but outside, her ring shot was all right, and the leg throw, once you figure out how to block it. I mean, it was a glitch in it though. They did patch it out eventually, but in the earlier versions, that block, it was almost unblockable if you got knocked down, so it would frustrate a lot of players. And I did see a lot of people get ticked off in arcade when people would do that move over and over. But overall, she's okay. And next up, we got her rival, Kano, the ruthless Black Dragon's mercenary. And Kano is the opposite of Sonya. He's a criminal and leader of the Black Dragon clan, a group of thieves and murderers. He has a metal plate in his face and a red cybernetic eye, making him look like a cyborg. He's wanted in multiple parts of the world, and Kano doesn't care about honor or rules. He fights dirty, throws knives, and laughs and has a good time while he's doing it. He's the perfect villain for Sonya to hunt down. Now, as far as Kano goes, I feel like he was probably one of the lesser characters in the game, in my opinion. He did have this move where he could, I think his best asset to me was probably his double kick. And what I mean by that is it was kind of a game, I won't say game breaking, but kind of a glitch in the game where you jump in deep with his kick, and then when the person flies up, he was able to come up again and hit them again. And it took a lot of damage when you did that. It was kind of, you had to have the timing just right. And it's hard to do. If you're playing on a CRT screen with Mortal Kombat, the moves are a lot easier to do. But if you're playing MAME emulated, it's kind of hard to get that timing because MAME doesn't have, while MAME is great, it doesn't give you that exact timing that the arcade did. But yeah, if you could pull it off, you know, it's actually a pretty cool move. But other than that, I don't think Kano has a lot going for him. You have to hold block to do all his moves. That little ball he does, it takes a while. You have to hold block and roll the joystick, and then he'll start going. And it's really predictable. It comes out kind of slow. The computer does this fast, but when the person does it, because you can knock it out. You can spear it, you can shoot it, you can knock him out the air. You can pretty much shut that down real quick. And his knives are pretty good, but remember, you have to push some block to do it. So you know, he's probably, but without that kick, he'd be complete garbage. So yeah, he's not really one of the best characters to play, in my opinion. Next up, we got one of the more famous characters. We got Lord Raiden, the immortal thunder god. And Raiden's one of the most famous characters in Mortal Kombat. He's the god who controls lightning. He can teleport, shoot electric bolts, and even fry enemies to a crisp. But he's not evil. Raiden is an immortal protector of Earthrealm. He joins the tournament to guide the humans and keep the Earth safe. Players love Raiden because he looked cool and had some of the best moves in the game. Now, this, I feel like this was a retcon version of Raiden, because here he's not super nice. If you get to the end, Raiden is kind of bored with the tournament. And I think in this one, he joins the tournament, not so because they don't have the whole story mapped and fleshed out like they would in later Mortal Kombat games. So just know this version of Raiden, he's more just whatever. He kind of takes the form of human form just to test himself in the tournament. And when he wins, it says he gets bored of it, and he invites gods, and they end up destroying the Earth, and Raiden seems to be okay with that. So he's not the Earth Realm's protector just yet. He's just a guy, just a mortal thunder god doing his thing. So that would come later on in Mortal Kombat 2 and Mortal Kombat 3, where he actually, then they retcon all the characters. Then he would become the Raiden that we know today. And also the arcade, this version's you spell his name R-A-D-E-N. And for some reason, the home version spelled it R-A-Y-D-E-N. I don't know why that ever happened. I have no idea. If you know in the comments, please let me know. But we're talking about Raiden's moveset here. Raiden has a decent moveset. He does have his torpedo attack when he flies across the screen. He does have also his electric shot. That's pretty good. What does hurt Raiden though is, and he has a teleport, which is, it's okay, it's situational. But what hurts him is when you knock him down, he has a slower recovery getting up because he does his teleport animation when he gets up off the ground, and that kind of gives him a slower recovery than most character, so that can kind of hurt him. Also, if we're talking about Raiden on a personal level, I feel like a big part of his inspiration came from the guy from Big Trouble in Little China. When I first saw Raiden, that's, if you ever saw Big Trouble in Little China with Kurt Russell, excellent movie, by the way. Jack Burton, Jack's the guy. But there's a guy on there that looks just like Raiden. The hat's a little different, but for the most part, he has lightning, he has the hat, and kind of the same outfit. So yeah, I definitely think that's where they got the inspiration for Raiden from. Also, another big part of Raiden is when he's in his torpedo mode, what is that man actually saying? I always thought he said psychic marmalade. I know that's not what he says, like, you know, marmalade and jelly and psychic. I know that's not what he says, but I don't think he really says anything. I think it's just a guy making a noise, and people have made memes for it and all kinds of stuff, and some of them are actually pretty good. And another thing to note, that he will alternate between, because he says two different things when he's flying. He will alternate once you do it, and the next time you do it, he'll make the other one, and so forth. Same thing with Scorpion. He'll say, get over here when he hits you with the spear, and then he'll say, come here when he hits you with. So just know that it's not random, it's actually a pattern for it. And next up, we got another Mortal Kombat veteran, Scorpion, the vengeful undead ninja. So if you ever heard somebody yell, get over here in culture, they're talking about Mortal Kombat and Scorpion, and that's pretty much universal. That's like probably the most famous phrase in Mortal Kombat history. And he's one of Mortal Kombat's most iconic characters. Scorpion's a ghost or a wraith or a specter, depending on how you want to say it, brought back from the dead with one mission. Why? To get revenge on SubZero, who killed him and his family. And he wears a yellow ninja outfit that can summon fire from the underworld. And his story is all about vengeance and loss. The players loved his spear attack and his fatality, because it was probably one of the easiest ones to do in the game. Now, Scorpion will go on to be Mortal Kombat, if not the most famous character from Mortal Kombat. I mean, you think Mortal Kombat, most people think Scorpion, SubZero, and then Raiden as well. So those, and I know Liu Kang's the hero. You can kind of throw him in there, but I think Scorpion and SubZero kind of outshine Raiden as far as popularity in Mortal Kombat characters. Because who doesn't like ninjas? Plus, you know, with the get over here kind of deal, I think that's a big thing. As far as Scorpion goes in this version, he's okay. I mean, the ninjas, in my opinion, and this is just me, they are, in this version of the game, they are probably not the best because they don't have the best priority. I think they're the coolest, but they don't have the best moveset. I mean, they have all your basic stuff, but their kick is kind of slow. They don't have great priority. And in Mortal Kombat 2, they would get awesome priority. They'd be, in my opinion, the best, some of the best characters in the game. But in this version, it's kind of hard to link their moves together. And yeah, so they're not the best, but they are the cool factor though. They are top notch as far as Scorpion having his own thing and SubZero having his own thing. But so overall, I think Scorpion in this game is just cool, just with the spear and his showmanship. I think that's what takes Scorpion, makes him one of the better characters for showmanship. But as far as playing the game, he's okay. Next up, we got SubZero, and this is the cold-blooded assassin. So SubZero is a ninja from the deadly Lin Kuei clan, and he wears blue and can freeze his enemies with a single blast. He's calm, silent, and ruthless. A true assassin in nature. He's Scorpion's sworn enemy, and their rival become one of the most famous in all of video games. Players love SubZero's icy powers and his mysterious personality. And he wasn't just another fighter, he was a cold-blooded killer in every sense of the word. Now, SubZero, this version of SubZero is probably one of my favorites. I always loved, if we go into the lore of Mortal Kombat, I always loved SubZero, this version of SubZero, the original, the OG, Bihan, that's his name. And if you go into the lore of Mortal Kombat, but this version of SubZero, this is the true SubZero to me, my opinion. Now you would have his brother later on, Kuai Lang. He was the one to resurface as SubZero's brother. I like him, he's cool, but I like the OG SubZero. That's just my personal opinion. Kuai Lang would go on to have like pretty much the rest, and Bihan would make a return later when they had the reboot in Mortal Kombat 9. But I feel like when I think SubZero, I think of the true SubZero here. I just feel like he was more fits that his rivalry with Scorpion, and because the other guy didn't even have a rivalry with Scorpion. Scorpion thought that was SubZero original, but it wasn't. So he doesn't even have a rivalry really. He kind of does his own thing, and he has a cool story arc. But I personally love the OG SubZero. As far as SubZero in the game, this game, he's okay. He's just like pretty much does all the same movesets as Scorpion. Only difference is he has a slide. Scorpion doesn't have that. Scorpion does have a teleport though. In this version, it's really not that great. In Mortal Kombat 2, it's actually pretty good, but in this version, it's all right. As far as SubZero goes, he has a slide that's actually pretty good. So I'd give him the edge in this game only because of his moveset with the ice, and he has that slide that comes in really handy in this game. So he's better than SubZero. He's better than Scorpion in my opinion in this game, but you know, it doesn't make, he's not top tier, but he's decent. And we'll talk about the bosses real quick. We got Goro, the four-armed champion, and Goro is part human, part dragon, and 100% scary. He's huge. He has the 4 muscular arms and dragon-like features in some ways. And he's undefeated He's the undefeated champion of Mortal Kombat for the last 500 years. He serves Shang Tsung and crushes anyone who stands in his way. And at the arcade, Goro was super hard to beat. You had to cheese him pretty much. He could grab you one of the pair of the arms, and players would drain a lot of quarters trying to fight this guy, especially in the beginning. Now, he's not playable, obviously, in this game. There will be later versions of games, of not this one, but versions of Mortal Kombat where you could play as him. I think the Game Boy version had a code where you could play as Goro in the game. If you want to go with the lore with Goro, he's the prince of the Shokans, and they are like these, you'll see later the female version of him with Shiva. She's a Shokan as well, and they are like a race in the outer world. So he basically supposedly dies here. He fought Kung Lao, and that's actually the descendant of the Kung Lao we would see in Mortal Kombat 2 and so forth. So, but yeah, just know that he's basically not a human. He's a claymation thing put together. But yeah, pretty excellent and pretty unique design at the time. But they would go on later with this lore to give him all this backstory. And finally, we got Shang Tsung, and the mastermind behind the whole tournament. He's an old, creepy looking dude who can steal souls and transform into other fighters. He's cunning and dangerous. The final boss of the game, and beating him was actually a big deal at the time. Now, Shang Tsung in this version of the game, he's kind of, I don't want to say lazy boss, because they just ran out of memory and programming. And remember, these guys only had 8 months to make this game. That's why the ninjas kind of look the same. And this version of him, he's shape-shifting kind of, but in his regular form, he does as a cheat move where he shoots these skulls at you. If you get hit with one when you're in the air, it's pretty gonna take more than half of your life. And in the arcade, he's a lot harder than you play on home consoles, as far as like, well, if you play the NES and versions like that, they can change on the fly. But if you're playing like a disc version of this game, you do have load times when he changes between characters. So you kind of he won't really catch you off guard like he does with home port. That's a cartridge or the arcade, of course. But this version of him is probably one of the weaker versions of him, because every version of Shang Tsung, for the most part, in later except for later games, in the earlier games, he could transform into, like Mortal Kombat 2, he can still transform into all the whole cast. In this one, he can actually transform into Goro as well. So it can be any one of the characters, and that can help him or hurt him, because if you have a weak character he turns into, you can actually do most of the damage. And when he just flies backwards at the end, he only has one attack. And one thing to note with this version of Shang Tsung, when he's in his sorcerer form, you can't sweep him. He's off the ground. So if you try to sweep him, it'll go right under his feet. Also, Shang Tsung's lore will grow later on in the series. All the characters will grow eventually, but this version of Shang Tsung is probably just the base OG version. They kind of got it when he's all old looking. He really doesn't look like that ever again for the remainder of Mortal Kombat. So this is probably the worst looking Shang Tsung that's in the whole series. And lastly, we'll talk about Reptile. He's a hidden character in this game, and he has the same sprites as the ninjas. He has the same powers as SubZero and Scorpion combined, and he walks really fast. And he's a hidden character. We will go into that later on, how to unlock him, and I'll show him to you. But he's a retcon character as well. In this version, he's just a ninja. He's not, he's human. At least I think he's human. But he's not the Reptile we'll see later on in the franchise. But this version is just a base version, and he was just cool, very cool, because he was thrown into the game as a hidden character. And it was certain features, we'll talk about certain criteria you had to meet to get to this guy. So to talk about him is to say that he just basically think of SubZero and Scorpion combined, and they just walk really fast, and he's super hard to get. So and you can't pick him other than that. And what's cool in this, and also to note that, and we'll see it later on. Now, as far as I know, I could be wrong because I've never seen it before, doesn't mean it's not true. Reptile doesn't have fatalities in this version. He just kind of knocks you down. But if you play, I want to say it's the Sega CD version of the game, he does act, or the Amiga maybe, I can't remember which one. I know I got footage of it, I'll show it to you. He actually does Scorpion's fatality. So in that version of the game, he will actually do a fatality to you. So I don't know if they just added that for the home versions and left it out in the arcade, or if the arcade, he can actually do a fatality. I'm not sure, but that's pretty much Reptile. So now we talked about the characters, let's talk about the gameplay. What really made Mortal Kombat different in arcades wasn't just how it looked, it was actually how it played. So you actually had 5 buttons in this game. You had a high punch, high kick, low kick, and this would be one of the first times that we would be familiar with the block button. So the joystick lets you move in all directions. This meant anyone, even someone who never played a fighting game before, could start throwing punches and kicks right away. But taking the page out of Street Fighter's book, Mortal Kombat had something special: secret moves. Each character had hidden moves you had to figure out for yourself or learn from friends, and this made it feel like there were secrets just waiting to be discovered. You had SubZero's freeze, had a shot blast that froze enemies solid, leaving them helpless, and he did this with the fireball motion. Then you had back motions like Scorpion, when he throws his chain dart and yelled, "Get over here." He had that, and it was different because in Street Fighter, generally when you had charge characters with directions, you had to charge them as if they're called charge characters. And what made this different was Mortal Kombat had inputs. So instead of pushing like a fireball motion, the move would still come out with a fireball, but you can just push down and forward and the move would come out as well. So they had inputs, but you had shortcuts where you could just do the bowl motion like you do in Street Fighter. So if you do a down forward in Street Fighter, the fireballs not come out. But here for like SubZero, down forward, his move will come out. But you can also roll it like a quarter circle forward fireball and get the same effect. So none of the characters, to my knowledge, and Mortal Kombat, maybe later on Mortal Kombat, but this one right here, you didn't have any charge moves. Now, there was certain moves in Mortal Kombat where you had to hold the button down. That was the thing, if you want to count that as a charge. But one of the main changes with Mortal Kombat was the blocking. Blocking was really different. In Street Fighter 2, in most games like that at the time, you block by holding back on the joystick. But in Mortal Kombat, there was a dedicated block button. And that was a big deal, because it was a kind of a game changer. Players had to actually think carefully about when to block or when to attack. And it made matches feel more tense and definitely added a layer of strategy. So it forced you to learn timing and patience. So with all that said, let's be honest here. That's not the real reason people lined up around the machines. The true draw, the fatalities. If you managed to win the final round of the match, the game just didn't say you win. Instead, the screen dimmed and you heard the famous words, "Finish him." And those 2 words were powerful. It meant you only had a few seconds to input a special sequence of buttons. And if you did it right, you just didn't knock your opponent out. You straight up killed them in a shocking, over-the-top way. And kids told their friends all about the spine rip, people getting burned, Raiden blowing people's heads up. It was just crazy, and word spread like wildfire. So Mortal Kombat had the gameplay, it had the shock value with the fatalities, it had awesome characters, but it even had secrets and Easter eggs. So let's get into those real quick. It's only a handful in the first Mortal Kombat, but still very cool stuff that would lead to later on big secrets in the franchise. So first up, if you ever played Mortal Kombat and was at the pit, you definitely saw this before, okay? If you take a look at the moon here, you see all this crazy stuff flying by. UFOs, kites, Santa Claus. And at the time when I first saw it, I thought it was just, I don't know what that means, whatever, this isn't being stupid or just being extra or whatever the case may be, but it actually meant something huge. It was actually your chance to fight Reptile, the hidden fighter. Now what you had to do was, it was kind of like a big deal at the time because you wouldn't get secrets like that in Street Fighter 2. I mean, greatest Street Fighter 2 was just kind of just Street Fighter 2, no big secrets. But this one, it actually had some criteria you had to meet. Now, let's talk about when this shows up. People say all the time, it's rumors. I remember reading back in the day, you had to have 99 battles for it to show up. It's not 99 battles. I actually played through this recently, arcade mode, and it took about me looping those stages, because the stages all loop in order. So it took about 5 to 6 times me looping the stages. So it might have been about 30 to 40 matches you had to play going through the stages, and then finally this would show up. So when this scenery shows up with the clouds, with the moon and everything going behind it, you have to get a double flawless victory on your opponent. You can't block, and you have to end it with a fatality. So you basically have to not get hit, not block, and do a fatality. And if you did that, then you would be rewarded with a chance to fight Reptile at the bottom of the pit. Now, to explain Reptile, he is kind of tough in this game, kind of cheap. He basically, I want to say he's on the hardest level at all times. The good thing is here, he is a ninja, so his priority is not that great anti-airing you. And another good strategy is to move forward close to him, because he walks so fast, and then jump backwards and kick, and he'll walk right into the kick most of the time. So basically, you only got one chance to fight this guy. You lose, game over, and when you continue, you'll continue where you left off, but you won't fight Reptile again. Also, you get a crap ton of points if you kill him and do the fatality, and you defeat him, you get a bunch of points. And you can do a fatality to Reptile. You can actually kill him in this game. Another Easter egg or hidden thing we already talked about was the pit. Basically, you just gotta uppercut the person. You don't gotta do any fancy inputs. In Mortal Kombat 2, you will have to put inputs in to knock them off the pit. Pit 2 is what the stage is called. But in this one, you just uppercut them with a regular uppercut and they'll fly off the stage automatically. Another thing with Reptile is he'll usually land down in the middle of the screen sometimes and just random, and he'll give you clues of how to find him. So he'll say things like, look to La Luna, and he'll have other cryptic messages like, the key is going at it alone. Now, I'm not quoting these verbatim, but that's pretty much, he'll give you basically clues of the criteria you have to meet to unlock him in the game. Well, to fight him in the game. You can never control Reptile in this version of the game, but to get to him, he'll give you cryptic messages to do it. And then you had to test your might bonus game, which is pretty cool. It wasn't like, it's kind of what Street Fighter's answer to breaking the cards and kicking the barrels, but it was the same all the time. And you had like 4 things you had to break. You had the wood, the stone, steel, and diamond. And all you do is mash the buttons, and when you hit the block button, you would actually do the karate chop and break the item if you had your power was high enough. So it wasn't actually a big secret, but it was a hidden bonus challenge that broke up the serious fighting and made it pretty cool. And let's talk about some of the rumors they had in this game. I mean, because it was tons of, you know how people, you take them and you just run with it. So let's just talk about some of the rumors they had in this game. So some of the urban legends are you could fight Ermac, and Ermac wasn't real in Mortal Kombat 1. It came from an error code saying Ermac's short for error macro, but people saw it. I remember it was an EGM magazine, and people said, oh, you know, Ermac, he's in the game. And later this would come to truth, but at the time it was just kind of a glitch. Also, people said it was a Goro code, which it wasn't possible. There was no Goro code. You couldn't play at him. And hidden fatalities no one knows about. You know, obviously they're going to lie and say people made up wild moves trying to discover them. But that would become bigger in Mortal Kombat 2. But when we cover Mortal Kombat 2 on this channel, we'll talk more about that. And these rumors spread fast through schools, arcades, and honestly, that was part of the memorable part of the fun. So all the secrets, the real ones and the made up ones, are big reason to help spread Mortal Kombat's legacy. So let's talk about the controversy, because as good as this game was, it did break a lot of rules back in the day, and it was available to younger audiences. So I don't know, what the world think about it? So the Mortal Kombat wasn't just a popular game, it was an explosion that rocked the whole country. When it first showed up in arcades, it shocked people, it shocked kids, and unfortunately, it shocked adults. This wasn't like Mario or Sonic, it was a dark, violent game. When you beat your opponent, you didn't just win, you might rip their spine out or burn them to ashes. And parents saw this and freaked out. News channels loved showing these gruesome fatalities on TV. Anchors would say, is this what your kids are playing? It would run clips of the fatalities and the violence in the game. And soon panic began to spread, believe it or not. But then it didn't just stop at the parents. We had the famous 2 US senators, Joe Lieberman from Connecticut and Herb Kohl from Wisconsin, and decided enough was enough.
I hope you walk away with one thought today, that if you don't do something about it, we will.
And this led to a revolutionary change in video games, or at least ratings anyway. In 1994, the ESRB was born, the Entertainment Software Rating Board. So every game moving forward would get labels like E for everyone, T for teen, or M for mature, 17 plus. The idea was simple and helped parents make good choices. But let's be real, a kid goes in there and says, hey mom, buy me Grand Theft Auto. That's all I'm gonna say about that, without getting too technical. So I mean, while the rating's there, it was just a way to cover their bait. They had to do something. So you can't say, hey, my kid's playing this violent game when you bought it for him. If he's not 17, he shouldn't be buying or playing that game. And with that said, there was a twist. The whole controversy didn't destroy Mortal Kombat. It actually made it even more famous. Kids heard it was too violent and had banned moves. Suddenly, everybody and their mama wanted to play the game. Arcades made a fortune off the hype, home versions sold millions of copies, and game companies realized something important: controversy sells. So the debate over violent games didn't end in the 1990s. Even today, people argue about whether games make kid violence, but the ESRB is still here on every game box and online store. So that's enough of that. Let's move on to the home ports, bringing Mortal Kombat home. So Mortal Kombat wasn't just some small arcade game with a few loyal fans. It was huge, jaw-dropping hits that took the world by storm. So kids lined up in noisy arcades, clutching quarters and sweaty palms, just waiting for their turn to do a fatality. But here's the thing, what if you didn't want to wait in line? What if you wanted to play all night at home? And that's exactly what kids wanted. In 1993, Midway and Acclaim gave them what they asked for, but not in a traditional way. Let's talk about Mortal Monday, the big launch event. So let's start with the thing that made the home release legendary, Mortal Monday. Acclaim, the company behind publishing the game, didn't just want an ordinary release. They wanted a moment, carve out a moment in time. So they invested in Mortal Monday, a giant marketing event that would make sure everyone knew Mortal Kombat was coming out to every major system on the same day. And the date was burned into every kid's brain, September 13th, 1993, which in 5 days would be my 18th birthday, just saying. It just wasn't about selling a game, it was about creating hype, attitude, and rebellion, and it cemented its place as a must-have title of 1993. So, with all that said, let's go over some of the versions of Mortal Kombat for the home system. Some good, some bad, some terrible. So, let's have a look. So first up, let's talk about the Super Nintendo version. And now, Nintendo was famous for having, at the time, awesome graphics and sound, and kids expected a Super NES port to look just like the arcade, and in many ways it did. The characters and stages were very close to the arcade visuals, the music and sound effects were great as well, but there was one major problem: no blood. Nintendo was all about protecting its family-friendly image at the time. They didn't want parents getting angry and blaming them for selling violent games to kids. So they made some changes. All the blood in the game was replaced with gray sweat, and fatalities were toned down or just changed completely. For example, SubZero didn't rip out spines anymore. Instead, he froze his opponent and shattered them in a less gory way. And fans were furious. Kids didn't want a censored version, they wanted the real Mortal Kombat experience from the arcade. And a lot of people felt betrayed. It felt like going to see an R-rated movie and getting the PG version instead. Now for me, that's the version I ended up getting. My buddy got the Genesis version and I got the Super Nintendo version because I was team Super Nintendo back in the day as opposed. And I love my Genesis, but I did prefer most of my games if they had the same game on the Super Nintendo, because most of the time, not all the time, Pit Fighter, this game, Mortal Kombat, but sometimes, you know, Genesis would definitely have the better version. And that's up for debate, you know, but I got this version. I got the Super Nintendo version. And the version I got, and like most kids got, it was like one of the biggest bag over the head punch in the face I ever got. It was, for one, I honestly feel like, even though I think the only thing Nintendo had going, the Super Nintendo version had, it looked better and sound better than the Genesis version, but in my opinion, it played worse because it didn't play like it played kind of like the arcade, but the moves were it was just off. It felt like it was kind of sluggish when it played. It didn't play like clean like the Genesis version, and it didn't have the blood, of course. The fatalities were terrible. I can't remember all of them, but I remember, I think Raiden, when he shot you, you turned into like a thing of dust. Johnny Cage kicked you in the chest and you just kind of flailed and fell down. And SubZero kind of, oh God, instead of ripping your spine out, he shoots you with the ice and punches you. It was bad. It was bad. And then it was off when the person would be like, finish him. They'd be spinning super fast as opposed to just kind of going a little bit. They'd be just real fast. Then they just keep throwing you. For some reason, the Super Nintendo version was throw happy. I don't know why, but they just keep throwing you at the end of like when it says finish him. It was just a bad. If you ask me, it sucked. It was, for what it was, it was okay. It looked good, but it just didn't play that great, you know, compared to the Genesis version. But that's my take on the Super NES version, you know. But that's the version I got, and you know, yeah, it sucked. Next up, we got the Sega Genesis version, and meanwhile, Sega smelled blood in the water, literally. Sega's whole brand at the time was being cooler and edgier than Nintendo, you know. That this was back in the Genesis does what Nintendo don't days. So they wanted Mortal Kombat to stay violent, but they also didn't want to get banned or face angry parents. So they came up with a clever solution, and so did a lot of releases with this system right here. By default, the Genesis version had the blood turned off, but there was a secret code you could enter to unlock the original arcade violence, and this became the legendary ABACABB, also known as Abacab. So this was a nod to the band Genesis, who had an album called Abacab, and a sneaky way to say Sega was cool without getting in trouble. And kids would pass this code around the playground like it was forbidden knowledge. Now, the graphics weren't as polished as the Super Nintendo, and the sound was a lot simpler, but it had real fatalities and real blood, not just a whole big pile of sweat. And for most fans, that made the Genesis version the version to get. And myself included, even though I didn't have it, I'd go over and play with my buddies, so I wasn't gonna buy it again because games were expensive back then, and I was just working in shaky, so I didn't have a ton of money. But I would go play his version of the game. So definitely he had the superior version. And I feel like for me, with Mortal Kombat 1, definitely the Genesis was the superior version to compare to, and that wasn't the definitive edition, home edition, but it was the better version to get than the Super Nintendo one, in my opinion. And the Genesis one was actually pretty cool. The music was kind of, the sounds wasn't that great. The sound did sound better on Nintendo, but as far as the flow of the game and the speed of the game and just the way the computer would fight and the computer actions and stuff, it played more realistic to the arcade, in my opinion, than the Super Nintendo version did. So definitely a really good port. The sprites were a little small to my liking, but outside of that, I mean, for a home version, you're playing Mortal Kombat and you got the blood and you got the fatality. So yeah, definitely a win-win for the Sega Genesis version. Next up, we'll talk about the Sega CD version. And the Sega CD was an add-on for the Genesis that used CDs instead of cartridges. And CDs had way more space for data. So the CD version was built from the Genesis version. So they were very similar, but this was definitely a superior version. So it had better audio, the music sounded much closer to the arcade. But despite the CD's power, the graphics and gameplay were still almost the same as the Genesis version. Now, it did move, in my opinion, a lot smoother. And it was a nice upgrade if you had the Sega CD, but it wasn't the giant leap some people had hoped for. I feel like it could have been a little more arcade perfect, but it is what it is. But still, it showed Sega was willing to push the limits and keep the violence intact when Nintendo wouldn't even touch it. As far as the best version of the ones I got today, I feel like this one's complete. Now, there are some other versions that I'm going to show, like the DOS version was actually pretty good. We'll take a look at that one as well. But the Sega CD version was probably the most true as far as the music and the way it looked and the way it played and the accessibility you could have to it. I mean, it was just a really cool, and you can go later on with the PlayStation version of it, but that's like a CD base. So I mean, yeah, they should be in arcades, right? But if we're talking about in real time, around the 90s when the game came out, Mortal Monday, I feel like the Sega CD version was very, very good. I mean, it had the music, it had the gameplay, it kept the blood. And it did improve on, it was a lot like the Genesis, but it did improve on the Genesis. So to say it was exactly like the Genesis would be inaccurate, but it was similar. But so overall, still better than the Super Nintendo version though. Because let's be real, at that time, the heavy hitters on the block were Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. And Sega Genesis definitely won out big time with Mortal Kombat 1. Next up, let's take a look at the Game Boy version. And the Game Boy, I'll give them props for even trying the game. The Game Boy had the black and white screen with limited power. Graphics were super simple and the controls were stiff and fatalities were pretty much gone or really basic. I mean, but you know what? Kids still bought it because it was Mortal Kombat on the go. And if you ask me, I think this version is pretty much unplayable. I mean, I couldn't get any of the moves to come out. And Game Boy, it shocks me because Game Boy usually has pretty good, controls. They're pretty solid, But for some reason here, this game just plays like pure doo-doo. It's garbage. So don't even waste your time with this one. And next up, we got the Game Gear, and this is Sega's colored handheld, and it was a bit better than the other one, than the Game Boy. It had color graphics, smoother controls for the time, and more faithful representation overall. But still, this version was nowhere near the arcade. But the kids carried, Mortal Kombat in their pockets, and for some kids that was enough. But for me, it was garbage. This is a garbage port. Then we had the Sega Master System version, and even the good old Master System had a combat code, and it played a lot like the, if you ask me, the Game Gear version. They were pretty similar, on par with each other. I never played this version in real time at the time because at 1993 and 94, I didn't have a Sega Master System anymore. I had it, but I wasn't really doing anything with it, so I definitely not going to spend money for Mortal Kombat, but it was available if you wanted it. And let's take a look at some of the computer ports. We had the DOS version, and the DOS version was actually, because DOS is hit or miss sometimes, if you ever played DOS games, it was actually pretty good. The graphics were close to the arcade, they kept the blood, everything was, this is probably one of the, in my opinion, one of the better versions. This one right here was actually pretty cool. You actually had fatalities, you had the blood, and it's actually a very good representation of the arcade. And then you had the Amiga, which was, in my opinion, another good port of the game. And all the more adult looking ports, they all kept Reptile in there, the secrets, and sometimes you could fight Reptile at the bottom. And like I said, it was just a really, really cool game. So Amiga did good, the DOS did good, but overall, I'd say the biggest nod, in my opinion, would go to the Sega CD version of the game, because the Amiga ones were great, and the DOS one was great, but the other one, I think this one was more accessible and more realistic that you could actually play. But the PC ports, in my opinion, did look better. The PC ports did look the best, and they played pretty good. So I'd say probably the best version for me overall, if I had to take in all counts, would be the DOS PC version, even though the music's a little off sometimes. But the DOS PC is probably the best version that you could get for Mortal Kombat at home at the time. So finally, let's talk about the legacy Mortal Kombat 1 left behind. So Mortal Kombat 1 didn't just release in 1992, it sparked something huge. Mortal Kombat introduced characters who became legends. I mean, you had Scorpion with his famous "Get Over Here" line, Spear Attack, SubZero freezing enemies, Raiden shooting lightning, Sonya, Liu Kang, Johnny Cage's a song they made. They went on with movies and all kind of stuff. Also, most fighting games, it changed the way games look and feel. Most games at the time used hand-drawn arts. Mortal Kombat used real filmed actors and costumes. It made had the fatalities. So what are my final thoughts about Mortal Kombat as far as legacy and impact at the time in 1993? I feel like Mortal Kombat came at a time where it was like lightning in a jar. I mean, it came at a time, what makes it so cool was it came at a time where there was real competition out there. Street Fighter 2, pretty much, I love Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter 2 was just king of the hill in the arcades at that time. I mean, it was nothing like Street Fighter 2 at the time. This Mortal Kombat, it just came out of nowhere. I remember first seeing it, it was actually at a mom and pop arcade, where I didn't see it at the mall. I went to a mom and pop arcade, my local arcade where we had it. And yeah, it just took the world by storm. I was shocked when I saw Fatalities and just the game itself. It was just so, because we didn't know any of the lore back then. We didn't know what the game was about. We didn't know the characters really. We were just trying to learn the characters, and we really had no idea. Because I mean, let's be real. When you play an arcade game, did you really sit there and watch the demo and the intro? You didn't do that. You just put your money in and played the game because it looked cool. So that's what we did. And eventually over time, reading EGM magazines and stuff like that, we would learn about these characters, but it was just really cool. It was different. Yeah, and there were other games like Pit Fire at the time with live digitized graphics, but this one was just with the fatalities, with the hidden secrets, with the awesome soundtrack, the violence in the game. It was just very, very cool. Not to mention it would go on to have like the home releases of the game. I thought that was a good thing. And honestly, I enjoyed playing Mortal Kombat 1, but I wouldn't really get my competitive. It's me, I didn't feel like it was a competitive game. I was still kind of focusing on Street Fighter. I wouldn't compete really with Mortal Kombat until Mortal Kombat 2. And that's when I would take this game a lot more serious as far as fighting games. But Mortal Kombat 1, it was kind of laying the foundation of what it was, because it was just a fun game, and it was a broken game, but you could do a lot of cool stuff in there. Like they had the, like one of the things, and I didn't find out how broken this game. We'll take a quick look at 100% combo, and shout out to the person that made this. But yeah, it was just a cool game, and we didn't know about these things at the time, how broke the game could be, but definitely it was a lot of fun. And I'd have to say definitely this one was a game changer as far as with the rating system and all that stuff, the comic books, the movies, the cartoons, everything about the game. It was just awesome. So, because I was from the Chicagoland area at the time. Oh, and one more thing. I did actually meet Ed Boon one time. I met him at, it was called, it wasn't Combo Breaker yet. It was called UFGT Fighting. And I think it was the release of, if you were there, if you were from the Chicago area, if you attend like Combo Breaker, before it was Combo Breaker. And what Combo Breaker is a big fighting game tournament. And UFGT Ultimate Fighting Game Tournament is what it was called before that. So I used to attend those back in the day. And actually Ed Boon showed up to promote, I want to say it was Mortal Kombat 9. Might have been Mortal Kombat X, I'm not sure. But one of the years he showed up was either 2013 or 2014. And I actually talked to him real briefly, because I mean, I'm nobody. I just said, hey, you know, what's up? He's like, oh, what's up? Super chill dude. He's tall too. He's really tall. And he's a super chill dude, just a nice guy. But anyway, going back to that with Chicago, it was kind of cool living in Chicago, outside in the Midwest Chicagoland area, to actually just see all the Mortal Kombat machines. But anyway, back to what I was saying at the beginning. Did anybody ever order that Mortal Kombat book that they had? You could $3, you could send it to that place, Midway in Chicago. If you have one, I wonder if those things are worth any money. Because I remember every time I play Mortal Kombat Arcade, I actually see that thing pop up, or order your magazine. So if you got that, it's probably worth some money. So hold on to it. So that's all I'm gonna say about Mortal Kombat 1. Definitely a good trip down memory lane with this game. It was a lot of fun, but like I said, but even as great as Mortal Kombat 1 was, the best was yet to come. they were just scratching the surface here, and we'll talk about that in a future video. Mortal Kombat 2, and for me, that is when I started taking the game competitively, seriously competitively, and it was just, I didn't think they could go any further than the greatness they had here. They did a Terminator where Terminator, because most sequels usually suck, they improved on the first one in every way and magnified everything bigger, badder, and brighter. So we'll cover that video at a later date, but it is in the works and it's coming. So that's gonna do it for Mortal Kombat 1. Let me know your experiences below in the comments. And with that, guys, take care of yourself, protect your inner peace. God bless you, and catch you next video. Thanks for watching.